Hey, it's time for the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg. Jason is here. Hi, Jay. What's going on, man?
G-Dub, good morning to you. How's things?
Things are good. Obviously going to be very busy here, Jay, because it's Wednesday, afternoon for me, morning for you, and we got to get to Barber for the MotoAmerica final round of the season. I'm excited. You?
Yeah and no. I'm bummed because it's the last one. I think that it's going to be a blast this weekend, and Greg, there's so much racing going on around the world this weekend. I think we got World Superbike this weekend in France, and BSB starts at Showdown. Our series is obviously running. There's just so much stuff to take in this next weekend. Our podcast is going to be slammed next week for sure.
Well, luckily for you, you're jumping ahead on the World Superbike. They're not until the following weekend, the last weekend of.
Got it.
But you're right. There is a ton of racing going on. There's flat track and all kinds of and BSB and all kinds of stuff going on all over the world. It's a busy weekend. I think the only people that aren't racing this weekend is World Superbike. That's what it seems like anyway.
Yeah, you're right. France is in a week or so, isn't it? What about is the World Endurance this week?
Yep. Bold d'Or, right? Bold d'Or,
is it?
I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't it start? Actually, doesn't this weekend start the 19/20 season or something like
Correct.
that?
Starts the 2020 season. Exactly right.
Yeah, I don't really know how that works, but do you understand how they end up doing that?
Well, they do a wraparound year. So the last race of the year for them, for the points for the championship, is Suzuka 8 Hour. So they'll go.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
They do race one. And I don't know why they did it like this. Bold d'Or used to always be the last race of the year, and now it's the first. So they do a wraparound season. So it's not by calendar. It's a little bit similar to what like the PGA Tour does, which is just crazy to me. Those guys play every single weekend, and then they do their FedEx Championship, and then I think last week started the 2020 PGA Tour tour season, and it's grueling.
Yeah, that is pretty
grueling.
Who do we have over there? Do you know? I think is Melissa Paris racing Bold d'Or this year?
I think she is. Yeah. I think she's definitely over there.
Anybody else you know of from the States that's competing this year?
I don't. Mm-hmm. It's such a sad case too, because that championship has just blown up, like we've talked about here. The World Endurance Championship has factory efforts from every Japanese manufacturer, anyways, has a factory effort involved in World Endurance, as well as BMW. So it's you're getting a lot of tremendous riders over there as well. So
plus endurance is kind of near and dear to both our hearts, isn't it, Jay? You have 2 world titles. I have 1 national championship in endurance.
Yeah, what, you want me to go into that?
No, but anyway, it's true. But I was just waiting for the heckle. I honestly was just waiting for the heckle. But
I can't heckle you,
I
can't heckle you.
No, you can't.
No.
But the thing I was really going to say about it is, Jason, is there anything better for you as a young rider than going endurance racing? It teaches you so much, and you can do so much like experimenting on the bike during the course of a race. Don't you agree?
I think the biggest thing, Greg, is it toughens you up because you have to share the bike with somebody. Setup might not be perfect, so you have to learn how to ride around that. I think there's a number of riders over there that are making a living now racing World Endurance, and you literally can never have the perfect bike set up just for you. Sure, you can get close, and your teammate and you can get along, but I had a couple teammates along the way that our setups were just completely different, like in the sense that it could have been anything from gearing to suspension to whatever. And so you're always compromising, and you're having to learn how to get the best out of the bike that you can, obviously without doing something silly, because the bike's got to keep going around and around. So it takes ego out of you pretty quick when you're out there racing, and you get 2 other teammates and a team, and it's 24 hours. Crashing in those first 2 or 3 hours really is frowned upon. You want to try. Crashing at all is frowned upon, but
yeah, of course.
But you want to try to keep the thing upright. So it's. But I agree with you. It's definitely one of those things where endurance can shape and mold a lot of people, and now you can really go make a living doing world endurance. So make a good living. Those guys are, probably the top riders are getting paid anywhere from probably $5,000 to $25,000 per race over there. So
wow,
you can go make a decent living. Mind you, there's only 5 rounds. There's only 5 rounds, so there's
only 5 rounds. Yeah, that's the problem, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, speaking of guys who make a living, why don't we get into MotoGP, because we're going to talk about the race that just happened last weekend, since this is our second podcast of the week. So why don't we start with MotoGP, Jason, and let's go ahead and take a look at the results. It was Marques who won by 0.9 of a second over Quartararo, but not even that doesn't even really tell the story. at all. Vinales in third, Rossi in fourth, and Morbidelli in fifth. And yeah, if you're thinking there are 4 Yamahas in the top 5, that is true. Then you have Dovizioso, you have Polo Spargaro on a KTM, great ride for him. Joan Mir on the Suzuki. You have Jack Miller 9th, Petrucci in 10th. You have Zarco in 11th. Yep, Johan Zarco on the Red Bull KTM bike.
Thank you, goodbye.
Goodbye. Espargaro, Tito Rabat, Jorge Lorenzo, and then Hafit Cyrene beat Oliveira, Abraham, and Nakagami. Cal Crutchlow, a notable non-finisher in this one, as is Alex Rins, Pecco Bagnaia, and Michele Pirro also. So, Jason, let's talk about really the last lap. You want to start with the last lap of this race, which was a really good last lap, or where do you want to start?
I think that the segue into it and you giving the distance to the winner being 0.9 seconds. This race just it formatted itself a little bit different. We saw a big fight in Austria between Dovi and Marquez where they kind of were able to draft and redraft and take the lead and carve each other up a little bit. And then Dovi does his last corner thing, which was amazing. At Silverstone, we saw Rins kind of be able to sit on the back of Marquez while Marquez's tire was going bad, and Rins had just enough grip. At this race, Marquez almost took a page out of that book. He followed Quartararo. Quartararo is still looking for that first win. He's getting closer and closer. I mean, I don't know how you can't love the kid. He's tremendous to watch. But Marquez, the whole time, once he got to the back tire, just looked like he sat there, and that's what he did. He sat there. When I was watching the race, Craig, I don't know if it's just because we sit there and we watch races so much, but at the MotoAmerica events. But I said he's going to pass him in the turn one because the drive out of the last corner was so much better, and the Honda obviously had a little bit of steam over the Yamaha, as we know, and he made that pass, and it was going to be pretty hard for Quartararo to do anything. He got back by him, and then Marquez did his thing again. So the race was close. It was exciting to watch. All in the while, poor Vinales is coming up from the back again, wasn't he? I mean, he just lost all that time and then trims it to 1.6.
Yeah, it's weird. It was Vinales led early, then Marquez passed him, roughed him up a bit, I guess. And then it was 6 or 7 laps where Vinales just kind of lost his focus and started chipping his way. Rossi had some pace. He claims he didn't have the pace, but he got gobbled up early on. And I think he was maybe 8th, 7th, fighting his way through traffic eventually.
Well, I think that, and to your point there, at that track, Greg, coming from third row is difficult. It's very difficult. Coming from the third row, I think he qualified 7th. It's hard because the run to the first turn is short, and you have a series of very sharp, kind of slowish S's at the beginning. So, it's very hard to pass guys that are very defensive at the first, say the first 30 seconds of that lap. So I think Rossi made the work hard for himself just through qualifying, and that's, he lost touch pretty early.
Yeah, also there was new asphalt, and I think if you go back and look at the lap times, the best lap race set was 2018 by Dovizioso. He did a 132.6 there. This time it was lap 5 at a 133.3. So you're talking about 0.7 of a second back from the best lap time. I didn't go and look at the lap chart, but what we do know is that the asphalt was kind of eating tires up a little bit, and it was dirty off the race line, and it wasn't ideal for some people in some setups. So it wasn't the fastest race at Misano, but it certainly wasn't the slowest race either. And the thing that impressed me the most, Jason, I don't know if Marc Marquez races with the earplugs or not. I know you didn't, and I did, or ride with earplugs. I guess I did. But
yeah, I think he does. I think all those guys do on these bikes for sure.
But man, the move he made in turn 14, Marquez. So Marquez goes around Quartararo, turn number 1, on basically motor. Quartararo fights back a couple corners later. Coming out of, turn 7, there's another straightaway in the middle of the track. Marquez gets by him again. And by the time they get to 14, Quartararo, you can see it. I've watched it 15 times, Jay. They get in there, and he just parked them. Marquez parked Quartararo because Quartararo was ready to get on the gas. It was that rhythm part of the track where he was just going to get on the gas, and Marquez just waited 1 extra second. How masterful is that move by Marquez?
Well, the thing is that it's so hard when I sit there and I watch these races, and you and I have had the discussion about the best MotoGP riders and things. Dude, there's nobody as good as this kid. He's unreal. Like his determination, his grit, his ability to not really care what people think outside of things, which is I love. I feel like, Greg, did his celebration afterwards look different? It kind of made me feel like that is the true Marquez. Like he really wanted to. It almost looked like he was, I don't know how to explain it, over the top a little bit with his excitement. I mean, this is a guy who's won a bunch of Grand Prix before, 4 world titles. I mean, or multiple world titles if you consider other classes and things. And yet this win, when you look at it in the big spectrum, why was it that big a deal? And you had 2 turns of him in the winner's circle or in Parc Ferme there. He absolutely is losing his mind with his team. And then he turns into this, I don't want to say he's like acting, but he turns into this like super gracious, great guy with Quartararo. It was just very strange, but there's nobody that can equal this guy right now. There's going to be guys that are going to throw shots at him. We've seen 3 different guys in the last 3 races. But Greg, the guy's just too good. That's all I keep saying to myself at the end of these races when I watch it. I'm like, this guy's too good. He just really is.
So you have 3 factory Hondas in the field and 1 older Honda, right? Nakagami.
Yeah.
A Honda wins, the next Honda 14th place.
Yeah, and not just 14th place, but 3-time MotoGP champion and 47.2 seconds back. And what Lorenzo's hoping for is to be within 30 seconds of the leader at the next round. And I sit there and I think, number one, if that was the case, I wouldn't want that coming out in public. Like the fact that I'm going to the next race and hoping to be within 30 seconds, I get it. He's been injured. He's tossed the thing down the road, all that. But man, it is a disaster for Lorenzo. And I think Marquez finds motivation from all kinds of things. And I think that every time somebody else gets on that Honda, he just wants to bury him. And say what you will about developing a bike around one person and all that stuff. The guy is just, he's too good. The bike that he's on is noted to be maybe not the easiest bike to ride, and he finds a way to do it. I mean, Greg, let me ask you a question. When you look at Marquez, are there any bikes on the grid right now that he couldn't win on?
I was thinking,
I believe there's 1 or 2.
But do you believe? Yeah. No. I mean, and could he podium on every single bike in that paddock? Every single new bike. I'm not saying some
like the Aprilia and all that.
Yeah, like Carroll Abraham's bike or something like that. And maybe he could podium on that thing. I mean, given time to adjust, to the different characteristics. Yeah. I mean, he's just on another level, and we see this from time to time. I mean, he is just a bad dude. He just gets everything dialed in. He takes risks when he knows he can get away with it, and he rarely. That's why I think Cota was such a big surprise when Marquez out front by himself just threw it down the road. I think everybody was like gasping, like, "Oh my goodness, what was that?"
Championship would it'd be over by the next round if he hadn't made that one mistake all year. I mean,
no kidding, right?
And when you and it's no disrespect to the other riders, it's not that at all. It's just that when you look at through the history of sports, from your guy Tom Brady to Michael Jordan to, there's always going to be people that are just that good. They have a way of being able to go above and beyond. Rossi was that guy for so many years. And it's impossible to compare greatness to greatness in different eras and things. But I'm not saying, kind of almost changing my vote now on who is the greatest, because this kid, I think it's a lot harder time right now to race when Marquez has been in the championship than it was maybe when Rossi was back in the day. Rossi had 1 or 2 challenges, but he was always on like the bike. When Honda was around and winning everything back in the day, Rossi was fighting other Honda guys. And there was nobody that could step up week in and week out, and he played mind games better than anybody else. Marquez is the same way, I think. I just think that right now there's nobody to his equal. There's guys that kind of try to step up, and you could try to intimidate him. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care. When you look a little bit further back, Greg, I think 4 Yamahas are good. Rossi just barely beat Morbidelli at the line, as it turned out. Dovi 6th. The guy that I think I'm most impressed with, other than Quartararo this year, is Paul Espargaro.
Yeah, I was going to mention his ride. It was great. He got a good launch. He was in 4th, and he just kind of held his own. Initially, it looked like he kind of held up the group behind him, and slowly but surely they picked him off. But I thought he did great, finishing only 20 seconds behind. And I say that because I think the KTM is just slowly but surely getting incrementally better.
I think so. And I think, hearing what he has to say about Pedrosa taking the job so serious and how much the bike has improved. But you kind of get the feeling that, again, there's only one guy that's really been able to tame that bike. And when you look at Paul Espargaro's history and you look at what he's done in the past, he's generally been a guy that's tossed the bike down the road a lot, all the time. And this year, not only has he stopped that, but he's showing that the KTM does have some potential. We keep on hearing about the frame and how it's not maybe up to pace and up to par with other bikes and things. The bike's obviously fast, but when you look at the guys he had directly behind him, he's got Joan Mir on a factory Suzuki. He's got Jack Miller, who finishes 9th, Petrucci 10th. I mean, he's got some guys behind him that many would consider to be kind of, especially Mir and Miller, kind of the future a little bit here of what the sport could be. And he's only, what is he, Greg? 8 seconds behind Rossi at the finish. So I think that him this year alone, Espargaro has been amazing. And you go, a little bit further back to Zarco, who I know we're going to talk about here in a little while. He ends up 12 seconds back, and you got to say 11th was probably one of his best Grand Prix of the year.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, is that his best finish of the year? Yeah, I think so. It's really close. But what do you make of Rins's crash?
We've seen it a couple times this year where he's just made errors and he's just slid off out of races. I think that the continuation of pushing, and I think that every bike on every weekend has its pros and cons. And this weekend, when they went there with the new track surface, like you mentioned in the lead up, that track seemed like it was a little bit slower. I read this morning where Dovey said if the track surface was the same as last year, he would have been competitive. Really irrelevant. That doesn't matter, does it? But I mean, it's the same with the Suzuki. I think that there's places and there's times when I think that the Suzuki is going to be a lot more competitive than it is. Like I can't really say that I thought the Suzuki was going to be great at Silverstone because I know it's at a deficit for speed and Silverstone's pretty fast, but it was easier on the tire and he was able to kind of stay there. And then you saw what he did at the end. And then you go to a track that's a little bit tighter and twistier and things. And you think, all right, Suzuki seems anyways pretty nimble. It should be a good track for it. But I feel like he's in one of those spots where if he can't run right where he needs to run, he can't do that ultimate lap time. And where he fell is, turn 3 or 4 there it's a very, very slow right-hander. It's pretty easy to it's where we saw really, I was thinking about it during the race. That's where we really started to see the World Superbike Championship slip away when Bautista crashed in that exact same corner. So it's got a couple guys this year.
I want to go back to Quartararo, Jason, for a minute, because you're talking about a rider who in his MotoGP career, in all the classes he's been in, all the starts, had 4 podiums. Now, in the Premier class, he has 4 podiums. So 8 total in his career. How good is he? Let me give you this fact. Fabio Quartararo's 4th podium finish in his rookie season since the introduction of the MotoGP class in 2002, only 3 rookies have had more podium finishes. Marc Marquez in 2006, or he had, 16 in 2013. Danny Pedrosa had 8 in 2006, and Jorge Lorenzo had 6 in 2008. At this point, obviously, he's in that conversation with the Marquez Pedrosa as a rookie. And he's still got a few races to go to equal or better Jorge Lorenzo's, 2008 with 6. I mean, we know that 3 of those riders, or 2 of those of the 3, are world champions. So what do you really make of it? I mean, you've been watching him now. He's up front. The good thing about someone running up front is we get to see them a lot, and we get to see their riding style. And the thing that impressed me the most was after Marquez attacked Quartararo, after he led for so many laps, Quartararo found in 4 corners a way to get back by. And I thought that was great because I kind of had the thought in the back of my head, Jay, that Marquez has been studying him. He knows exactly where Quartararo is going to be weak. He's going to make a pass stick, and there's going to be no fight back. And when Quartararo fought right back, I was like, oh, it shows so much intelligence and a tremendous amount of confidence in the front end of his Yamaha. So anyway, with all that crap, what do you really think about this kid? It's incredible to see his emergence for me.
He's done amazing. He's done an incredible job. He's finished all the races. Obviously, Silverstone, he crashed at the very beginning, but he's getting that experience, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of what Yamaha does in the future because Rossi's Rossi's still a top 5 guy, as he showed this weekend again. He's not up there. He's not up there really battling for victories. Vinales, if they can figure out the mid-race stuff with him, if Vinales could have just kind of stayed on the back of these guys for, a little bit closer, if he could have gone 2 tenths quicker a lap in those laps that he lost all that time, he would have been there at the end as well. And he's kind of proven that as the fuel goes down and so on, that he's capable of running the pace at the end. He always just seems to be a little bit late getting to the party. But yeah, Greg, Quartararo is amazing. I think that what it does for me, though, ultimately, is it makes me ask the question, who's the next guy in Moto2? Like, when you look at Fabio Quartararo, wasn't even on my radar as being as good as he was this year. It was actually a shock to me. It shows what I know. I thought Bagnaia would be amazing this year as a rookie on that Ducati, and he's been pretty much ghost. He's not even been around hardly. Joan Mir, I think, has done a pretty good job. Mind you, he's crashed a few times and hurt himself, but he's done a pretty good job. It kind of, you could sit there and you could look back from 6th to 15th place in a Moto2 race on any given weekend, and you think, who would step up to MotoGP right now and be competitive? Because Quartararo has just come from nowhere.
There's something, obviously, he gets that ride, though, because someone saw something in him.
Correct.
From pit lane and watching him. And that's really the distinction, is that if someone says, I'm going to go look at Quartararo for the next 5 races or 6 races and really watch this guy ride, they can do it because they're there in person, where we're subject to whatever the race is and whatever, the director wants us to see. So,
right.
That's a little bit different. But yeah, I think he surprised everybody. And I wonder if he surprised himself. I don't know if anybody's asked him that question yet.
Yeah, and I think too, we always hear what a political world it is in F1 and in MotoGP and things. And it's like, you just don't know what the ultimate thing was that kind of took it over the edge, if there was money involved with bringing him on or TV rights being French. And, Zarco obviously struggled a lot this year. I've heard numerous times that, Crutchlow with the BBC and all that stuff, it's important to have British writers in there. There was an article this week about who's the next British writer that's going to step into MotoGP, because they're kind of in the same boat that we've been in America, where we got no Americans in MotoGP. Well, not really sure who's going to step up over there in MotoGP if Crutchlow decides to retire at the end of the season or whatever. I know he's got a bad ankle, so it's one of those things where there's a lot of moving bits over there, Greg. And I think that with MotoGP where it's at right now, it's in a great place. They're expanding the calendar, it sounds like, to 22 races in the future. That's a busy time, So it's going well. So. I thought the race was interesting. They're at Aragon this weekend. It'll be, the Yamahas basically, I know are it's a flowing track and it should be good. It should be a great race because the straightaway there is so long. The Ducatis should be able to stay in touch, and I think it should be a good round. Moto2, Greg, this last weekend was amazing. Did you get to watch Moto2?
I certainly did.
It was great. Augusto Fernandez seems like he's the guy that wants to take it to Alex Marquez as far as this championship goes. He's able to claw back, I think, a very important another, what is it, Greg, 9 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 9.
Augusto Fernandez wins and gets that 25 points. Fabio Di Gianantonio rode spectacular. I think that the race at the end on the last lap, I want to ask you a question about that when we get done here after I give some results. But the race between those two guys was incredible at the end. Marquez third, Luthi. Sam Lowe's, great to see Sam put in a great effort this weekend. Ends up 5th, 8.7 back. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on with him, with his new ride with Mark VDS and so on. So I think it was just great to see him get a good result. He beats Brad Binder in 6th, Navarro, Xavi Vierge, Enea Bastianini, Lorenzo Baldassarre is our top 10. Then we got Marini, Jorge Martin, Moto3 world champion, Locatelli, Jantra, and Manzi. And on another note, Greg, just less than a second out of the last point paying position was our American guy, Joe Roberts. So good to see him finish. When you watched the end of that race, Greg, what was your immediate thought when you watched the last lap?
So basically what happens is Di Gianantonio is kind of leading on the last lap and Fernandez is right on his bumper. And then they kind of roughed each other up. It was Fernandez went a little bit wide, right, into the green, and then made a very aggressive move, and they kind of parked each other, roughed each other up. MotoGP FIM didn't do anything. I got the email afterwards. Stewards sat both of those riders down. They had a conversation with them, and they didn't do anything. I just thought that Fernandez looked like he wanted it more. How's that? I mean, that's kind of what it looked like to me.
I love it. And I'm going to go even a step further back, Greg. I don't even know what they were talking about with, like, what are they sitting them down for? It's racing. You're 3 corners from the end, and it's like, that tight right-hander. I don't get this whole race direction getting involved with everything anymore. It pisses me off so bad because what I saw, was they had given Augusto Fernandez a limit warning as far as, when you get out on the green and you do all that crap, okay?
Yeah.
They'd given him that warning. And a corner before where the pass was made, he went 4 feet outside of track limits, out on the green, okay?
Yeah.
Now, the only problem I am not disputing the finish of this race. Augusto Fernandez won the race. I felt like he won the race. But where, as an organization, do you draw the line with giving somebody track limit warning where he went out onto the track, Greg, and he went real wide through those fast right-handers, which is easy to do. But what it ultimately allowed him to do was it ended him being a little bit wider going into that right to where it was easier for him to square up Fabio Di Giannantonio and go up underneath him in that next right because of how wide he had gone off the track prior. That's the problem that I had more than anything. And I'm really saying that I don't have a problem with the result, but the consistency in when it's okay to run out on the green and when it's not. And I feel like race direction deflected that point to, let's go and look at the pass itself and the touching and, we're going to warn these guys and talk. To me, that wasn't even the deal. If you watch the end of that race, and I'm sitting there with my mom, all right, who's watching it with me.
Who knows racing? She knows racing.
My mom, yeah. My mom, my 80-year-old mom knows racing beyond. But didn't you kind of get the feeling when they crossed the line like something was going to happen? Yeah, somebody had to say something. It was like the whole cool-off lap. Huh, Greg? The whole cool-off lap was like,
waiting for
everyone's kind of like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah, I was waiting for the stuff to come up at the bottom of the screen saying that Fernandez has been penalized 3 seconds for exceeding track limits or whatever. And that's the thing. He got it. He got the warning earlier in the race. So there is no question. I mean, had that the idea behind the track limits thing is we have asphalt. However, if there wasn't asphalt and this was a gravel trap, you've got to pay respect to that. Because if that's the edge of the racetrack and you can't race beyond that, then that's what they're trying to do. Like I've told you the story before, I've been in a situation like that at Spa where basically they just had a white line painted and said, don't go beyond this white line. If you go beyond this white line, you get penalized. You get penalized more if you do it a second time because there was a dirt wall there. So for a safety sake, this particular instance is to kind of say, all right, well, you have pavement, which is better, but it's a gravel trap. Just imagine it's a gravel trap. So I think that, listen, I don't work at MotoGP. I'm not part of the FIM. I get all that stuff. But although you're saying I don't question the result, I kind of do. I mean, in my opinion, Fernandez should be 5th place. He should have gotten a 3-second penalty. It should be Di Giannantonio, Alex Marquez, and Luthi, because in Moto3 that happened. In Moto3, someone lost a heap of points because they got penalized got a 3-second penalty on the last lap. Can't remember who it is till I look up the results, but I remember going like, woof. Yeah.
But Greg, what if that happens 2 or 3 laps from the end?
Yeah, then he probably gets the penalty. Like that's the thing that
he either gets the penalty or he gets another warning. Right. But it kind of influenced the finish of the race to me. And I don't know, and I know what you're saying about the 3 seconds. I feel like the momentum that he carried and that he gained allowed him to stay close enough to Di Giannantonio to make the pass.
Jay, had that been a gravel trap, he would have been off. You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Had it been grass. Yeah. Even if it was grass, right? Even if it was grass,
gravel, it wouldn't make a difference. There's no possible way he could have maintained the same speed he had.
Exactly right. So when you look at all that and you sit there and you watch that final lap, now the crazy part is Di Giannantonio's team is losing their mind. And Di Giannantonio probably comes in and thinks, I don't even think Di Giannantonio had any problem with the pass, any of that. I mean, again, we've seen riders making contact again all year long. Contact, it's been happening. It's going to happen. The racing's too close. We all love it as fans. We want to see that. That said, D'Antonio doesn't know when he pulls into Parc Ferme that Fernandez 2 corners before that had run out over the green or the grass, as you would say, Greg, or gravel.
Yep.
He has no idea. He just thinks that he got beat to the line and he got fair and square. What do you think his thoughts were after he saw that back? And he had not received any warnings, had D'Antonio at all about running wide. He hadn't received any of those. Fernandez had. And, anyways, I just think that this is where, as race control, you have to have consistency. You have to be able to sit there and think to yourself, did that play with the outcome of the race based on the rules that we've set for our riders, just like your white line in Spa? And I feel like it did. So it's interesting to see what they're going to do moving forward. And I'm looking forward to reading if anything gets said about it before Aragon. I thought Alex Marquez, again, was tremendous. We've seen a maturity in him. I think in the past, Greg, he probably would have thrown the bike down the road, but he didn't, did he? I mean, he ended up third. He self-admittedly said, I just didn't have the pace of these two. It's not one of my favorite places. We're going to go on to Aragon, where he's historically very good. And he gathered his points and moved forward. But if Fernandez, you can't take anything away from the guy with the criticism we've said about race direction here. 2 race wins in a row in this class is phenomenal, and he looks like the guy that could bring it to Marquez.
That and the points are now, Marquez has 197 to Fernandez's 171. So, it's one of those championships.
It's 25, so it's
26, right? Yeah, is that what it is? 26?
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah, I think it was 35 going in. So 26 points. Yeah.
So that's 9 points. Hey, whoa, we can do math, but that's the thing.
Yeah, we're
but
pretty
Marquez,
good, aren't we?
like you're saying, the maturity of Marquez is saying, okay, I'll give him 9 points. Why not just give him 9 points? If you're looking ahead, so they have, Motoland Aragon coming up. Then you go to Thailand, Japan, Australia,
all the flyaways, huh, Greg?
Sepang, and then to Valencia. He knows with those 6 rounds remaining in this championship, Marquez is going to know exactly where he's going to sit in this whole deal. Now, the only thing I'm concerned about is when we're at Silverstone, that's when he crashed, right? Didn't Marquez crash at Silverstone out of the race? So the one thing that has me just sitting here going like, okay, all right, 3rd place is great. It's not a championship pull away leading, race. Obviously, he lost to his championship rival. But the next race is going to be very critical on how I view Alex Marquez if he's really gotten to the point where he has matured to the point of, is it going to be a good race for him? Is he going to push the issue? Can he hold it upright? Or is Silverstone the beginning of the end? Does that make sense? Like, that's the one concern I have, is he'd had such a good role mid-season. Is Silverstone the beginning of the end for Marquez? So I'm going to wait to see probably at least this last race in Europe before the last race before they fly away. So
the flyaways are tough. I just think any of these, the Moto2 stuff is just so hard. And you see guys who have done great things this year, and you see guys like, you look at Lorenzo Baldassarri in 10th. The guy won 3 Grand Prix at the beginning of the year, and he's just nowhere to be seen anymore. I'll tell you, Greg, the flyaway races are hard. It's hard work for the crews and the teams, and it's pretty easy to get on a bad run and all that. But I don't know. I just feel like Marquez, has his stuff together a little bit better this year. The mistake at Silverstone was just that. They can be made. But man, I just think momentum just plays such a big role. And going back real quick, I think that when you look at the top 10, there's one guy that shines out to me that I think could be a potential MotoGP guy, and that's Enea Bastianini. He's riding hurt right now. He's shown himself to be up at the front. He hasn't won a race yet this year, as well as D'Antonio. We're talking, these guys came up from Moto3, and D'Antonio was the best that we've seen him run in Moto2 all year long, but he started to show some consistency being up at the front as well. So I think that when you start looking at who are we going to pick from, because next year's such an open year as far as contracts goes, those could be a couple of guys that you could look at. They've talked about Baldassarri as well. Yeah,
I thought at the beginning of the year I would have picked Baldassarri hands down, just because of the way he rode at the beginning of the year, the size that he is, But the one thing I noticed in Moto2 that's kind of good is, being that everyone's on equal tires, equal motors, it just looked so different when they were, on the run to turn number 7. When they in GP, when you saw the Yamaha versus the Honda, it's just the motor and any straightaway given, it's like, they blow right on by. And the thing that always impresses me with Moto2 is that the majority of these passes have got to be made on the front. There are a few that on acceleration, if someone makes a mistake, we saw Brad Binder leave some rubber on someone from an onboard camera. I can't remember who it was, but they showed a slow-mo of it, and that was like a pass up the inside on the exit of a corner. But the majority of them we see on the brakes, and it's not just done by, a motor. And you just go, oh. Like the one thing about MotoGP on that last lap is when Marquez got it round Quartararo in the front straight and then got back by him, I didn't celebrate because I knew they had one more straightaway that Marquez was just going to blow right by him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where in Moto2, it takes that completely out of the equation, and you're like, okay, this is actually on drive. And when we get to the next corner, is it going to be a braking duel? Who's going to be able to, do what in the corner? And that's where the racing feels different to me from MotoGP to Moto2.
Right.
I actually look at the whole thing and go, well, okay, if you're Marquez and you got a motor on a Yamaha, just play it safe and just pass on the straightaway. Like, no big deal.
Right.
Where Moto2, you're always on the edge of your seat because you're going like, oh boy, what's going to happen now? And I love that,
I agree with you 100%. The biggest thing about Marquez is that he ain't afraid to do it at the end of the straightaway either. So you get hit with both ends. And really that's what's been the separation of that championship this year.
All right, let's talk about Moto3 because it was a massively emotional win in this one. A good close race. Again, the top four covered by 0.7 of a second, Jason, where two of those bikes didn't quite make it to the line at the end, but it was Tatsuki Suzuki on the 658 Squadra Corsa team, which of course is the Marco Simoncelli team, which is what Misano is named after. So a big emotional win, his first time on pole position. It was a great race. John McPhee slid his way into second unexpectedly on the last lap. Arbolino in third, Masia in fourth, Foggia in fifth, Rodrigo in sixth, Ramirez de la Porta in eighth, Salic in ninth, Fernandez in 10th. But obviously the not classifieds. I mean, out on the first lap, you had four, and then the rest of them, Jay, let me count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 or 11 riders that just didn't make it. My boy, Iogura, got caught up in just a happenstance situation.
Such a shame.
Yeah, he was in a good position to get his
coming, Greg.
result. I know.
He was coming.
All right, Jay, so let's talk about the Suzuki win. They've been chipping away at it. We know Suzuki's put it on the deck sometime, unexpectedly a few times this year. That win by the 658 squad, obviously Marco Simoncelli's dad, the whole team, crazy, emotional, crying. Suzuki said after the race that he was crying in his helmet. What did you think when you were watching that race? Did you get emotional? I got a little emotional.
It was pretty cool. I can't take away the fact that they're at the circuit that's named after Marco Simoncelli. It's his dad's team. I think what got me, Greg, after the race was probably an hour or two later, there was a retweet that was done that back in 2017, when Suzuki signed with this team, he had written a tweet to Marco Simoncelli saying, "I will bring your dad up on the podium with me one day. Look down after us," or something like that. And I thought that's pretty cool. 2 years later, it's exactly what ended up happening. And it's just weird how things happen. It could have been any race this year that he could have won. Any race this year could have been his first one. And it just happens to be at that track with that team. I thought it was incredible that he did it. Yeah, the emotions were good, and it's always fun when you see historical moments like that in any sports. I was sitting watching some baseball last night, which, me, I don't do very often, but I was watching it, and there was a thing about Carl Yastrzemski, famous Boston Red Sox. Well, now his grandson plays for San Francisco, and they did this big thing before the game because Carl Yastrzemski couldn't get out to San Francisco to see his grandson's first game in the major leagues. He steps up to the plate and hits a home run his second at bat, and it's like historical things like that. When they happen, you just sit there and you scratch yourself and you think like, wow, that's just amazing. And that's kind of how I felt with this one, that we've seen Suzuki throw away a lot of opportunities this year, the frustrations with the team, with him tipping off and for him to win, I thought, and he did it so well. I mean, to get pole position and then lead the laps the way he did and fight, I thought it was incredible.
How great was it that he was just pole putting, not slowing down, but he was blocking the inside line, especially with a couple corners to go. I thought he had a great tactical race on top of just the fact that he didn't crash, that he's leading these races. I just thought he had a great tactical race, especially on that last lap.
Yeah. I think that when I watch a rider do things on the last lap of a race to protect their lead and close the door, and how many times, G-Dub, have we been on TV calling our races, and I'm nudging you in the ribs, and I'm like, please let this, close the door, and then they open the door. Like, if you've got guys like, Marquez, Tony Elias, I mean, you go down the list, Cameron Bobby, you go down the list. If you leave the door open for these guys on the last lap, I mean, you're just doomed. And when you think about this, Greg, that's a 40-minute race these guys ran in Moto3. And you think, again, to the fact that at the beginning of the race, we had 9, 10, 11 guys dicing and scraping and carving each other up. Man, you better have your brain in gear. I mean, ultimately, the reason why Ogura crashed was no fault of his own, was it? I mean, he got taken out.
No.
Some stuff happened in front of him, and he gets cleaned out. It's like, man, you got to have all those. You got to have all those senses about you. So to win a race the way he did, I thought was incredible. As well as, we saw a couple guys breaking away from that second group, and McPhee was the one that got there. And
how about McPhee? Pretty
good, really good. And he's signed on again. The guy's made a career out of Moto3. It seems like he's 40 years old to me. But he ends up second on that Petronas Sprinter Racing Honda. And he got there all the way to the last lap, took advantage of some stuff that went on the last lap to sneak by Tony Arbolino, who's really done well. Again, another good ride from him. So, yeah, I mean, Moto3 just never disappoints. It doesn't never ever disappoints. Let me ask you a question. When you do the no spoiler thing, I know you don't watch these things live, but I always watch Moto3 first, even though I'm dying to see what happens in MotoGP, and I don't do it for any of the spoiler stuff because they're pretty good at that. But I watch Moto3 because it kind of gets my blood pumping a little bit for the rest of the races.
Yeah, I'm exactly the opposite. I like to get MotoGP done and then I watch Moto2 and Moto3 only because I got to warm my heart up, because if I went straight out of the box with Moto3, it would be absolutely nuts, because I don't know why. I've always been, if I pick somebody that I'm rooting for, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are like this, I just get really invested in it. So if I see someone I like, I don't know Ai Ogura at all. I just met his sister, and she came over here and raced a couple times, and I was like, great, I'm a big fan now all of a sudden. But when I saw him up front and in a possibility of a podium and stuff, I was like, ah. And when he pitched it, I was like, oh my God, my poor heart broke.
Yeah, and see, I'm the same, because you got to know Karin, and there's like a connection there with our paddock now almost. It's because that her brother Ai Ogura, he's probably watching her races over here in America, so he's getting kind of a lesson about what MotoAmerica is here in America, watching his sister ride. And so I'm with you. I kind of feel the connection, because I was rooting for him as well, because he was the one that initially broke away from that second group and caught that first group. He caught him.
Yeah.
And, there's a couple big stories in this whole thing too, when you really look at the championship side of it. Number one, Aaron Canet, all the way in qualifying. I don't know if you watch Moto3 qualifying, but his last lap of qualifying was brilliant. It was the only lap that he ran, and he ends up qualifying second. And in the race, by lap 3, his bike was giving it up. And you very rarely do you see mechanicals in this class. He kept on going back out trying to fix it, because obviously he's in a championship points battle. I think that the bigger news is that Dalla Porta couldn't really take full advantage over Canet's exit. Dalla Porta got beat by his teammate at the end, and I thought that was interesting as well. Marcos Ramirez beats his teammate by 0.2 of a second. Not that there's going to be team orders with round 11 or 12 of the season, but Dalla Porta definitely didn't take advantage as much as I thought he would. I thought that once Canet exited, that Dalla Porta would be the guy that would be like, okay, I'm going to go win this race and get these 25 points and really extend the championship. But he just didn't have the pace, and he ends up 8th, Greg, 3.7 back.
Yeah, and that keeps the championship alive, because
it does.
It's 6 rounds, all right, and there's 25 each, so there's plenty of points to get, but it's still only 22. And in this class, Moto3 is just so unpredictable. I mean, Dalla Porta could all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm back on pace, everything's working good, and then boom, someone hits them. In this class, nothing is for sure at all. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's like if you have those opportunities as a rider, you finish 8th. I mean, you've got to be Delaporte to just kicking yourself right in the tail section, going like, "Oh man, that I blew it. I blew that one. I had a chance."
Yeah.
Yeah. Even second place would have been better, but 8th place, yeah, it's a toughie.
But that's the cool thing about Moto3 too, is that there are times when we've seen Aaron Canet lead the points this year where he's won races, and then we've seen him finish 12th because this guy finishes 8th place, and you go, well, no, let's put it this way. Prior to the race, knowing the race results, if I said to you, Greg, I only finished 3.7 seconds behind the winner, you'd be like, wow, that's close. That's great. Did you get second? Did you get third? No, I got 8th. You could have 7 guys in front of you. So it's, I think, again, Aragon will be a great race, and we'll see how that goes. Greg, I'm a huge fan now. MotoE. Did you watch any of it?
I did not get to see the first race, which is, it wouldn't load for me, but I definitely saw the second race. And I told you, MotoE's good. And I have to say, dude, I love listening to those bikes go by. I do. When they're like 4 or 5, they're like, meow. I mean, to me, it's
interesting.
Cool. It's different.
It's not like they're slow. We're going to get into some of the dynamics of the class itself after I read off the results of the weekend. I think this was a doubleheader round going in. They use Super Pole as kind of a unique thing that World Superbike used to do, where it's you go out there on your own, one rider at a time, and Misano did not disappoint with how that all panned out. But when we go to the races, Greg, you got a who's who of being in this class. You and I got kind of drawn into the class because obviously Bradley Smith has been on the show before. He talked up what this class was going to be. We see the likes of Sete Gibernau and Lorenzo Savadori, Maria Herrera, Canepa. We see guys that we know, or people that we recognize from other disciplines.
Yeah, Alex DeAngelis, Kenny Foray. Oh yeah,
correct.
Mike DeMiglio.
Yes, Mike DeMiglio, right. But we had a rider this weekend do the double, and I'm sure, well, I'm going to say I'm positive that not too many people know who Matteo Ferrari is, but Matteo Ferrari does the double this weekend in Misano. In the first race, he was followed home by Hector Garzo. Then it was Xavier Simeon, who we've seen in MotoGP. Those guys were covered by less than half a second. Then we had Raffin in 4th, who I believe, Greg, I'm not positive on this, but I believe he's getting drafted up to Moto2 for somebody who's injured, and I'll do some checking up on that. But then we had Canepa. Then we had Maria Herrera finishing 6th. She was 6.5 seconds back. She beat Savadori, who up until last year was one of the front runners in World Superbike. Nico Terol, Sete Gibernau, Josh Hook, Depunier, Bradley Smith, who was caught up in a crash early, and Eric Granado. He gets 13th. There was a number of non-finishers. And let's go to race 2, where Ferrari did it again in race number 2. He was followed home by Garzo, who had a great weekend. Mattia Cassidy ends up 3rd with Canepa, Herrera, Granado, Raffin. Bradley ends up 8th. Terrell, DeMeglio, who was our points leader coming in, ends up 10th. Savadori, Hook, Depunier, Ferrari. The races for me were kind of two kind of events. One of them was the racing was tremendous. It was good. The second day, Ferrari checked out, won by 2.6 seconds. The battle for 3rd was between Garza, Cassidy, Canepa, and Maria Herrera. That came all the way down to the line. You watched that race, right?
Yeah. That was
I
loved it. I thought it was great. Obviously the first 2 laps were very entertaining as everyone was sorting themselves out. I think Maria Herrera impressed. She impressed me when she was in 4th and then made a pass in 3rd on the brakes. And slowly but surely, people got by. But, Maria finished off the podium by 0.2 of a second. I mean, she finished off of 2nd by 0.4 of a second. She was right there in the mix. So I liked it. I really, it seems like these bikes are really raceable. Even though they're heavier motorcycles, they seem very raceable. Herrera has a teeny tiny advantage because she's a teeny tiny person, but for the most part, they look really equal on the straightaway. So a lot of what the racing is, like I was saying in Moto2 and even in Moto3, is got to be done via racecraft, not just turning the throttle. So I think it's great. It's very entertaining. I think Honestly, I think the laps right now, the amount of laps they're doing, 7 laps, kind of is about right. Does that, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, would you like to see them any
No, that
longer?
makes sense. Yeah, you kind of feel like it. I'm amazed that we've not really seen too many of them break. They proved to be pretty hard to pick up when you fall off them. I don't know if you saw Bradley's crash, but he got kind of cleaned out in a little bit of a group crash, and his bike was on top of somebody else's, and all Bradley cared about was getting going again and trying to lift the bike up off this other guy's bike and so on. But no, I'm with you. I think I
was surprised.
I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much.
Were you surprised that Simeon could high side one of these things?
Oh, well, that's where I was going to go with next. I said there's 2 parts to this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about
that. The crashes on these bikes remind me of old school MotoGP. I mean, like 2-stroke days. One of the things you've heard me say over and over, and what things I used to talk about at my schools and all that, is that torque curves can get you in as big a trouble as if you were at a higher RPM and spinning the tire up.
Yeah.
See, for me, when I'm on the edge of the tire, I never really liked the idea of the bike spinning up in the torque curve, because what it does then is it spins up into the higher RPMs and it's very difficult to catch. And the torque of these bikes is something that they talk a lot about. And Greg, I know I tried to get you to watch qualifying. Our schedules are busy. There was some huge high sides in qualifying. And then in the race, the first race specifically, there was some huge high sides in the first race. I mean, some of the photos that were being taken that have made their way onto Instagram, Kenny Ferre, for argument's sake, these guys are getting flung, man. It's like old school stuff. You'd have never thought at the beginning of the year that, okay, I'll go do this little electric bike class. They're not that intimidating. They're fine.
Well,
yeah.
Well, see, the way I was thinking about it, Jay, is it's exactly the way you're describing it. That electric motor is on off. That's it.
How bad can it be?
Well, no. It's on off, and so they're 100% controlled by electronics, because you can get maximum torque immediately. And so the electronics part of it is really the key to making those things go around the racetrack as well as they do. And so I thought that the electronics would be, further along in being able to save riders in high sides. But that's what I'm saying. Like,
right.
That's part of why I'm so surprised. But I figure, oh man, this is just going to be, just twist it and everything's going to be fine. But sheesh, man.
Greg, what's funny is we talk about lately how all these guys now, young kids and such, are being brought up with the electronics and learning how to trust them and live on them and this and that, right? Well, go ride one of these bikes now, because when you say that they're controlled by electronics and the amount of power and stuff that they can get put down, we'd have to ask Bradley, and maybe more than I do, but they don't have TC. They don't have traction control. These bikes, do they? I got to say no. I mean, the high sides that they have,
it wouldn't be traction control in the sense of what you think traction control would be with a petrol power. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
But there's got to be wheel speed, wheel spin controls built into it. There has to be. I don't know.
Well,
that'll be. We'll get Bradley Smith on for sure. I mean, he's really great.
We have to ask him.
Yeah, we'll have to ask him how it works.
Because the crashes this weekend were bigger than I have seen in a long time. Like, when I say big, I mean not speed or anything. I'm talking about just the launch angles that some of these poor guys were going off on. I say guys because Maria didn't do it, so that's good.
There you go.
but they were pretty big. DeMeglio was our points leader coming into here, and he had one on his Super Pole lap that I was like, oh man, that's. And then the worst part was the bike's chasing him down and hitting him from behind after he's been high-sided and flung out in front of the bike. I don't know. I just sat there. I'm like, this is kind of like old school racing to watch here.
Well, you bring it up that it seems like old school racing, like GP bikes. And what's interesting and funny to me is that the way we used to describe a 2-stroke 500cc motor would be, it's like a light switch, right? Flick it on when the power comes on. And ironically, we're talking about electric bikes, which is a light switch.
No, it's
a power.
It is. I get what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying? Like that was the way we described it 20 years ago. It's like, when the power comes on, it's like a light switch, whoop, and off to the moon you go, and all that kind of stuff. So I like it. I think everyone really needs to give it a chance. And if you have the MotoGP.com, experience, the pass, go back and watch some of those races, because the racing is good. The bikes are quick. I think the sound is different, unique, wicked. If you've ever seen that the Formula E, race, it's got a very similar, sound to those cars ripping around. And It's different. There's a place for it, in my opinion, 100%.
I agree with you. Yeah.
I'm really glad MotoGP took the risk on this series and have stuck with it even after the fire and some of the other things that have gone wrong.
I just feel like it's fun. That's the main thing.
It's fun.
It's just kind of fun to watch, and it's different, like you say, Greg. So that it definitely makes it kind of nice. So, but yeah.
You want to move on to Aragon? Anything you want to say previewing Aragon? With what we have going on.
Such a good track, and I mean Aragon to me, I've been there a couple of times. It's a fun place. It's got a little bit of everything. I think the track itself lends itself to really good racing. I think going into the weekend now, I mean, Greg, the points and all that in MotoGP, is it ironic that it's at 93 points?
It is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of funny. 93 is leading by 93. So I think that when you look at things and you look at what that championship is, this could be a weekend where we could see some people running up front that weren't there, obviously, at the last round. I read this morning that the Yamahas are really looking forward to going there, even though there's some long straightaways. I saw that Quartararo stated that he doesn't care. But the long straightaways aren't going to bother him, type of thing. So I think it's going to be a great weekend, a great weekend of racing. And I think it'll be fun to watch.
By the way, just a little note in Moto3, I forgot to mention this. With Suzuki winning that Moto3 class, this is the first time in history of Grand Prix racing that there have been 10 different winners in a single season of the lightweight class. 10 different winners in Moto3.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Really?
Yeah.
That is crazy. That is crazy. I think real quick, Greg, before we get on to our quick shift segment, I just want to give a couple people up to get you up to speed with a couple things. I just got an email from our girl Danelle at MotoAmerica. We got 14 entries this weekend, obviously for Superbike, Supersport. Greg, we got 34 entries in Supersport this weekend at Barber. I'm looking down through the list of guys and people that are going to be there. In our Liqui Moly class, we're almost have 30 entries there. So that's going to be good. We got quite a big group. And then Stock 1000, we got 22. And we got a tremendous, like the best number that you could have, Greg.
No, stop.
Of riders.
Oh, you're fired.
The best number.
You're fired. That's right. Yeah, I know that number. Isn't that what the New England Patriots
you know what the number
beat?
Is?
Yeah, the New England Patriots, didn't they beat the Dolphins by that number? 43-0?
Blah,
is that,
blah.
What hell?
43 entries for Twins Cup. So to end our season this year, we got a lot of people coming out to Barber, a lot of riders. Hope to see the spectators all get there because looks like it's going to be some good racing.
That means it's time for our quick shift segment presented by ARAI. Jay, for 3 generations, ARAI's been making some of the world's best helmets. And of course, ARAI helmets meet all safety standards. That means they're safe for you because a helmet is designed to protect your head. But they also pride themselves in a blend of engineering tech and human craftsmanship that makes an ARAI helmet fit better and feel better, which also protects you better. Your head's worth it. Go visit ARAIAmericas.com for more information on tech, fit, and paint jobs. Make sure you visit your dealer who's got an ARAI helmet too, so you can go try them on and make sure that the helmet that you want fits your head properly. ARAIAmericas.com, because you owe it to you. All right, so I don't know why, Jay. It's so weird. This thing used to trail off the music. Now it just stops. It's crazy. I gotta figure out how to fix that thing. But in this segment, Quick Shift presented by ARAI, I'm going to read off some things. We're going to, give them 60 seconds to answer, and then we do this deal, and then, some other things happen. You ready to go for it, Jason?
I'm ready. Let's do it, G-Dub.
All right, so my first thing for you is people are speculating that the on-track dust-up between Marc Marquez and Rossi, Valentino Rossi, of course, Saturday, is what caused Marquez to win the race. What do you think? Number one, what do you think? Number two, before you get to what do you think, describe what happened between Marquez and Rossi on Saturday.
You laugh because you know what I think. You laugh.
Ugh.
I hear you laugh. Look, does anybody really think that Marquez needs motivation? I don't understand it. Like, I get so frustrated by people that are continuously trying to make something that isn't there. Marquez wants to win every race. When I hear commentators say, oh, he could just sit in second and collect 20 points. Do they not? I mean, I don't understand. Where are they living? What rock have they just crawled out from under? And they don't realize that Marquez wants to win and destroy people every single race. When you saw him lose and finish second at the previous 2 Grand Prix, the guy was losing his mind. Then he wins and loses his mind this weekend because he wanted to win that bad.
Exactly.
Now let's go back to your question. The Marquez Rossi thing. I think, my opinion, I think Rossi looked like the dick move there to me. At this point, you are not going to intimidate Marquez and you're not going to intimidate Rossi. So they play these games. Marquez got a run on him going down the back straightaway. Rossi purposely to me, stopped Marquez from going fast. Do I care? Nope, doesn't bother me. I don't care that he did it. But if you're going to do something like that, just say you did it. Like there's no sense in like, oh, I made a mistake. I got in a little deep and I hear your bell go off and I don't care because to me, right, I look at this and I think to myself, although I like the bell, Greg, the thing is that Rossi came out looking bad to me in this point. And let me explain why. At Donington, we saw him playing games and at Argentina, I think it was in qualifying practice 1, Greg, he was so worried about people following him that he missed his good lap, if you remember, and didn't even get into Q2. So to me, Marquez is way more in Rossi's head. Rossi has not proven that he can get on the front row consistently. Yeah, he did it at Silverstone, but he's got to just go out and do his lap, do the best lap he can, and not even worry about Marquez being there.
Yeah, if he was battling with Marquez on the daily, it would be totally different. I think, all right, I get
Agreed.
it. Rossi's game has been to get into people's head and to trip them up. Sete Gibernau, I mean, the list, Max Biaggi, there's a list of riders, but that's not the case anymore. So I don't know if it was
Agreed.
I don't know. Yeah, it to me, it was totally.
I just laugh at it.
Yeah. But the point is, you're right. The press saying that it was Valentino, and it was the Italian press, by the way, saying that Valentino Rossi was the reason Marc Marquez wins the race the next day. I'm going to have to call BS on that one. That's the big no button. You know what I mean?
You think Marquez sent Rossi some flowers, said, man, thank you for the motivation. I really appreciate that. Because I wasn't going to try to win that race if it wouldn't have been for what you did Saturday afternoon. That's all I was thinking about on the last lap, chasing Quartararo. Just stop. I get the drama and all that crap. It just cracks me up. But no, that was not the reason why Marquez won. Marquez won because he's that good. Greg, Andrea Dovizioso made a comment in GP1.com that said, we have to think about 2020. I don't see Marquez anymore. What do you think about that?
Oh, come on. You kind of hit on it earlier. He said these things before, but I think at this point, he might be right. That the problem I have with making a comment like that, 6 races to go, is now you've put yourself in a position where it feels like you've given up. So now you go, we have to look to the future. You got excuses built for the next 6 races. That's my problem with a comment like that. What about you?
I feel like we can go back 2 years. We can go back last year. We can go back the year before, and we can see the exact same comments from Dovizioso.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I feel like I've heard this before. And the thing is, Ducati has lost its competitive advantage, and Dovi knows it. So now it's like, we can't beat him.
I'm telling you, Jason, so much is done in the off season now in testing because they lock those motors in. And when we kept seeing or hearing or reading that Ducati's not doing anything with the motor, that they're happy with the performance of it. And we know Honda was, and Honda, developed a new frame because they moved the air intake scoop in the middle and and they've been working. And I'm sure Ducati's been working, but it just doesn't seem like they are far enough or close enough to Honda, and it might just be Mark. It might be that Mark's on a completely different planet. We know he's on a different level, but he might be in a stratosphere somewhere that we don't know about. But it seems like Ducati's kind of lost the plot a little bit.
Before you move on, Greg, can I get an honest answer about something to you? What do you think the best, like if you had to just look at it as an overall, what do you think the best bike in MotoGP is?
It's a tie between the Yamaha and the Suzuki.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. See, for me, I still think it's the Ducati. I know it's got its shortcomings. Every bike does, right? But I definitely don't think the Honda's the best. And you got the best rider on, maybe not the best bike winning. The Ducati is such an unknown, and I think that when you look at Miller, who's been up front this year, he finished a little bit further back. Like I'm not just looking at one specific race. I'm not talking about just at Misano. Throughout the course of the year, I still think that the Ducati is the best bike on the grid. And I just don't know about the best riders. I don't know why I can't rate Dovey, but when I read stuff where there's been other things that he has said leading up into Grand Prix this year that have been very much, I'll put it this way, if I was his employer, I wouldn't be stoked on the stuff that he says about kind of going into the weekends. And as a crew, when you work for a rider, you don't want to hear your rider already downplaying how he thinks the weekend's going to go before he even swings a leg over the bike. I don't know. It's frustrating to me.
If you're like, I'm a big advocate of any business cultivating their core business, meaning if you make a product, whatever, but you still have you have other things that are businesses that help your business run. On a large company, you have to have a mailroom, you have to have copy centers, you have to have things that make the whole machine work. So back in the 90s, everything was about outsourcing. Got to outsource this, outsource. Let's focus on our core business. And so maybe I'm just old school in that way, but when you focus on your core business, you tend to thrive. And what Ducati looks like to me is that they've forgotten about making their motorcycle go around the racetrack as fast as possible. That they've got into all these gimmicky things like the rear end squats on the launch thing, and they're the ones who brought in the swing arm now has a wing on it, and it just seems like there's all these other distractions. Like, let's dog and pony show the thing into going the fastest we can around the racetrack, where it seems that Honda, to me, is more focused on the bread and butter, on the core of the business. Let's focus on the chassis. Let's focus on the engine. Let's focus on those electronics. That's just how it feels from sitting, here in the U.S. while the series travels around the world, if that makes any sense. So.
It makes sense because when you look at the Honda, I think it's not the best bike on the grid, like I said, but the best rider in the world is riding it. And you can, the same could be said for Paul Espargaro. The KTM, I don't think that the KTM is as good as Paul Espargaro is.
Yeah,
I think Paul Espargaro is better than the bike.
I agree.
Because he has proven that he's taken this bike that isn't that great, and you don't hear the guy complaining about the bike. He just gets on with it and does his thing, and it's, he would be a guy right now that I would stick on a factory bike other than a KTM, and I think that he could do really well. I think he's learned a lot on this bike of how to become a better rider and making sure you finish the laps and things. Anyways, we're getting on a tangent in our quick shift. I apologize, but I agree with everything you just said.
It's a good conversation.
For sure.
Now, had you reframed the question, I think, for me, Jason, and said, if I took Marc Marquez and I put him on any other bike in the paddock, which bike would he go the fastest on?
Yeah.
100%, I would say the Ducati. 100%.
I agree with you. I agree with that. I just feel like the Yamaha hasn't been up at the front, but for a few races this year. Like the Yamaha still has its flaws. Obviously, Misano was very much Yamaha type track. I mean, we saw 4 of them in the top 5. We haven't seen that in couldn't tell you how long. So, but I'm saying on week in, week out basis, I think that where Ducati has lost its, you kind of talked about where it's kind of where they're kind of losing out a little bit and where they've lost their place is some of the gadgetry. I believe it's rider. I do. I believe that when Jorge Lorenzo was on that bike, they were making big steps and gains. That guy, in the history of our sport, never will there be a weekend like Misano 2018 where so much was changed going into the following year, maybe a little premature. I still believe to this day, and the reason why we still hear the Ducati Lorenzo rumors is that he was the guy that was getting that bike to where it needed to be. I feel like Dovey was taking advantage of that as well. So they were, even though they might not have been talking to each other, there was mutual benefit between riders. And since Lorenzo's gone, it just hasn't been the same there.
Yeah, he should have stayed. I mean, history will tell, but he should have stayed. I don't think Lorenzo moving into a team where there is a Marc Marquez was a win situation. All right, last quick shift presented by ARAI topic, Jason.
5-minute quick shifts.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Yeah. All right, so Mika Kallio is going to replace Johan Zarco on the factory KTM for the rest of the year. There's a press release, and it said this, quote, Kallio assumes Johan Zarco's factory spot. Johan and KTM decided to mutually end their association at the end of 2019, but developments and ongoing work means that priorities have been realigned. The Frenchman will be exempt from his MotoGP duties, but stays contracted to KTM until the end of the season, unquote. Now, that last statement, Jason, sparking a lot of controversy on social media. What are your thoughts on all this stuff?
I'm a little disappointed in you and I. Why did we not see this coming? Why would you want a guy that's already not happy, who has not said very good things about the motorcycle. Why would you want him there when you're starting all your midseason testing for 2020, moving forward, trying different parts, different links, different, whatever the case, whatever they're trying on these bikes? Why would you want him around? I mean, it seems like an obvious choice. They got Kallio, who's proven to be pretty fast. And in fact, last year when Kallio was doing wild cards, he was beating the current riders that were on the bike at the time anyway. So why wouldn't you bring him in? I think that it doesn't surprise me, doesn't shock me. I wouldn't be surprised either if that first was not given to Danny Pedrosa. I'm sure he turned that down, and Kallio was sitting there waiting and saying, let's do this. Let's finish off this season.
Jay, did I miss something? I thought when Johan Zarco said that he was done with KTM, that he was done that day with KTM. I was surprised to see him still on the motorcycle. So, I mean, if KTM had pulled the plug then and didn't even let him race at Misano, it wouldn't have shocked me, because that's the deal. I mean, if, okay, you get to stay till the end of the season, you're going to be out of your last contract. I get you quit, or your last year of your contract, you quit, all that kind of stuff. I'm not showing you anything.
Right.
It's always actually been the rub with MotoGP contracts, the way that and I've never understood why they fix this, but riders are always contracted like from January 1 to December 31st or whatever it is. And so when the last race at Valencia happens and there's a test Monday, Tuesday, it's always the current team that will allow the rider to test the other bike,
right?
Kind of a thing. And it's always been kind of weird to me, but thinking of if your rider's jumping ship, they don't get to test. So for instance, Ducati and Honda for Lorenzo, perfect example. Would Honda allow Lorenzo, on Ducati to go, that whole situation, because you don't want your rider giving up information during the course of the year. There's a lot riding on it. There's tremendous amounts of money. The MotoGP paddock, and people don't really realize this, when you're a commentator and you get to do it once or twice or three times a year, which is what I've done occasionally when they were coming to the States 3 times a year, it's a very closed society in MotoGP paddock. It really is. It's a lot of secrets. It's a lot of information that doesn't get handed out. There's a lot of journalists that think they have inside tracks, and some of them do, but some of them don't. And they're just spouting off crap. But it's a very controlled environment on what you get. I mean, I've seen data on a MotoGP bike like once in my entire life. I can go in to any MotoAmerica paddock, and see, they'll pull up data and they'll show me data, and I get to see what squiggly lines are. But one time I've seen it, and only 2 other times have I gotten information about data, from someone who works in a team that used to work in the States that trusts me not to burn them up, those types of things. But so it's very closed. There's just so much money. There's so much tech. There's so much competition on the line. There's so much stuff. Of course, you're going to let Zarco sit at home and get a paycheck because you don't want him there.
What a strange situation that Zarco is in, though. I mean, arguably going into 2019, he was the most sought after rider in the paddock, in the sense that if there was a seat that had to be filled, it was like, let's get him. He turned down the Suzuki, he turned down the Honda, and then he ends up at KTM because of his relationship with the Tech 3 team that had moved over from Yamaha to KTM. And now, midway through 2019, he already decided that he didn't want to do this bike anymore, and didn't want to be part of the KTM project anymore. And then, 2 months before the season's even over, he doesn't have a ride. He doesn't have anything going into next year. I just think that it's a crazy place to be. And you only had so long in the sport, Greg, and just sit out a year or wherever it is that he ends up going. It actually is kind of a bit of a shame. So, yeah.
It is. All right.
Yeah.
So this weekend, MotoAmerica is at Barber Motorsports Park for the season finale. We hope to see you in Birmingham. American Flat Track stops in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That one should be fun. Jefferson, Pennsylvania hosts AMA Pro Hill Climb. Love Hill Climb. If you're near Jefferson, PA, go check out AMA Pro Hill Climb. BSB's an ass, and there's so much other stuff going on around the world. Go check out racing. Jason and I love it, and we know you're going to love it too. Anything else you'd like to say on the way out, JP?
Nope. Let's get to Barber. Let's have a great weekend, and we'll see all our listeners back here next Tuesday.